Hey guys, DMS here. Today I have for you the Ollo S4X. Let's check it out. I'm gonna pull up Ollo's website real quick because I want to show you guys something. They sell two headphones, the S4X and then a closed back headphone for monitoring and recording and all that. These, they say, is a reference headphone. It says on here, designed and measured using the IEC 60318-1 standard. Neutral and brutally honest. The entire marketing idea behind these headphones is measurements. It's based on measurements. There's a big comparison on here with their measurements between these headphones and tons of other popular headphones. And some pretty convincing looking stuff on here about their research and all the different things they've measured and information about the Harman target, which isn't the target that they're after. Interestingly enough, there isn't any information about what the target they're after is on this site, and I'm gonna remove all these other headphones for a second just so we can look at theirs. So I tried to do some detective work. I wanted to sit down and figure out what are they considering neutral, what are they considering flat, what are they measuring for? If this is a headphone that is designed and built entirely for reference sound for measurements to measure a certain way, it'd probably be good if we knew what their target or what they're considering flat is. So I emailed them, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We'll talk about the build, and then we'll loop back around, and I'll fill you guys in on what they said. So build-wise, these are metal on top, wood cups around the side, not much plastic on this thing. I will say they feel like they're built really, really well. The foam is nice and squishy, it has a lot of give to it. That's nice. They're about as comfortable as a semi-on-ear headphone can be because these are not full over-ear. They either sit on the top of your ears or they sit on the bottom of your ears, but they never will actually go all the way around your ears. Yes, even with these out, it's this kind of situation. They're on-ear, unless you have very, very small ears. So comfort isn't the best. There could certainly be more padding in here because it's basically just a leather strap without any sort of foam or anything in it. It needs some level of padding. The headband on top, I don't know if you hear that, is very microphonic. When this sits on my head, any sort of movements, you can hear ding, 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 like this sort of like ringing sound. So not the best thing in the world, but I do feel like they're pretty sturdy. I don't feel like they're gonna fall apart. They have dual 2.5mm entry, so it's nice the cable is removable. And right here we have a pretty generic dynamic driver. Nothing too special. Another quick note real quick, these really don't take any power. You can power them on pretty much anything, laptop, any amp is gonna be fine, any audio interface, mixer, whatever. They're pretty easy to power. And they don't really benefit from a nicer amplifier. They're too low of impedance to use with tubes. But this headphone has clearly been tuned using a variety of materials, the pad design, to achieve their target that they're after. Things like this little ring to help slide the pads on is a smart design choice. I would like some way to isolate this from the actual headphones. We don't get as much of a microphonic headband, but it is what it is. Let's talk about sound and loop back around to that email. So I emailed them and I basically asked, hey, I couldn't find out what your target curve is. You guys are doing all these measurements. It's really cool. I like to see when a studio or reference marketed product is consistent with some sort of reference standard. And the first guy said, well, there is no compensation curve at all. They're raw measurements, which that's not a raw measurement. You're missing the entire ear gain region. That's okay. Another guy came in right after that and emailed me from another email address from that company and said that the target curve and the compensation is flat to the human ear. So I said, okay, so are we talking about a Fletcher-Munson curve, an equal loudness curve, something like that? And the guy basically said, truthfully, I don't know. It's just whatever our measurement rig came as. So they got their measurement rig, they plugged in the default calibration file, which they believe is a equal loudness curve, which is essentially what our ears hear, and have tuned to that. The thing is it's not actually an equal loudness curve. The curve that their measurement rig comes with is the Gross-Keymar diffuse field target curve. When we compensate our measurements for Gross-Keymar diffuse field, look at that. Aside from being on a 5 decibel scale instead of a 10 decibel scale, we compress this in. This looks a lot like their measurement. How interesting. it does adhere pretty well to gross keymark diffuse field. Now, if I were to, say, take that and post a raw measurement of it, so here's a raw measurement, not compensated, and the green line overlaid here is gross keymark diffuse field. You can see we have the ear gain region, so this is a raw measurement. It's pretty adherent to that target response. I would say that this is very neutral to gross keymark diffuse field. So they did hit their target, they just didn't know what their target was. And with that said, I would argue that there's probably significantly better targets to take. If you're truly going for flat to the human ear, you should look at an equal loudness curve. But really for studio use, this isn't bad. You can get away with this. But there is a headphone that measures better and costs less. Now, in this case, I'm overlaying with a Harman combined target. I'm not a big fan of the Harman target because I feel like the low end is extremely boosted. This is the upper mid-range and treble from the Harman 2018, but the lower range from Harman 2013. Personally, I would say that a much better target would be Harman treble and just flat through the lows instead of this boosted little bit they have down here. But we're using this just as a reference point to compare to the Harman combined target, which was generated by Andrew. This is not an actual publication from Harman. Like I said, this is Harman treble and upper mid-range from 2018 with the bass from 2013. And we're only using it to see differences here. So overlaid with this is the Sennheiser HD 560S. And you can see in many ways they're very similar. The 560S doesn't suffer from dips in the 3 places that the Ollo S4X does. They both have a bit of a spike, the Ollo S4X around like 3.5 kilohertz, with the 560S closer to like 4.2 kilohertz. But if you look around 7K, the dip isn't as bad. If you look around 600 hertz, it's not as recessed. If you look around 70 hertz, it's not as recessed. The 560S is a more linear headphone, both to the Harman combined target, but also to gross keymark diffuse field. And I'm going to go on and say real quick, if you are looking for a studio headphone that adheres to a relatively neutral frequency response, the 560S is immediately a better option. Which is not to say that if you own the Ollo S4X that it's a bad choice, but I think that in both comfort and in accuracy, it does lag behind the significantly cheaper 560S. Though I do think the build is tougher on the S4X. So let's get back to this real quick. This headphone's target is not a bad target, and it's not far off from the target. In fact, the only real problem that I have with this headphone, because I will say this is overall a good headphone. The problem that I have with it, however, is that while they have done some of the research and they have put in effort to adhere to a target, it doesn't appear that they've done enough research into measurements to really understand what target they're after. And I think that is equally as important as doing what they've done here. Yes, it is impressive coming close to a target, but if you don't understand what your target is, what's the point? The measurements of their closed-back headphone look promising in comparison. They both are promising, but the measurements of their closed-back do look pretty decent for what it is. So that may also be a viable option. It also looks like it has larger pads from the pictures I've seen. I would like to get my hands on and try at some point. If anybody from Ollo ends up watching this, I like where you're going with this. Try to take a little more time to understand the compensations and the target you're going for. Because if this were to be compared to an equal loudness curve, it does not sound completely flat. The dips are audible. I think this could use a better driver because detail isn't quite where it should be at a $399 headphone. The biggest benefit I would say that this headphone has over other headphones is that it is not a very fatiguing sound. Because of the dip in this treble region, it is much easier to listen to for longer periods of time than some other reference headphones I've heard, but I really do feel like compared to some other reference headphones, you are missing out on some crucial information. But I like the craftsmanship. I like where this is going. They're clearly an independent company. They don't have, the same kind of budget that Sennheiser has to throw at projects like this. And a little bit more understanding of where they're headed, a little more understanding of the target they're trying to hit, and if that is actually the target they're going for, because after what they've said and seeing the target that their rig is calibrated to, I think that once again, they would probably do better recalibrating or aiming for a target that is closer to what they're describing, an equal loudness curve. And I hope they manage to do that. I hope that Ollo can take the time to, sit down and figure out a target curve that's right for them, or just to at least alter their marketing to say, our target curve is Gross Keymark diffuse field. Because while I do love the whole idea of making studio headphones after measurements, I don't like the idea of marketing a headphone based on its measurements without actually knowing what you're measuring for and what your target is. It's a little bit misleading, and I don't think that's their intention, but it does come across that way. So Ollo S4X, the real question is, should you get it? If you are mixing, if you're working in a studio, 560S is a better choice. Unless you're really going to be beating the crap out of your headphones and just need the extra build. If you like the 560S, but want something that is a little bit more recessed in the treble, and maybe not quite as detailed, okay, Ollo S4X, not bad if you can deal with the smaller pads. Oh, and before I get completely through this, imaging, pretty average, nothing exceptional. It's nowhere near the imaging capabilities of the 560S, but you're at least able to clearly differentiate left, right, center, but not much spatially outside of that. And the soundstage is pretty flat. Everything just kind of hovers at the same distance right here. It's almost like when I'm talking and I put my hands right here, the sound doesn't really travel out any farther than that. It's not really an in-your-head sound, but it's not really an out-of-your-head sound either. It sounds exactly like what it is, two little speakers sitting right next to your ears. It's a headphone that does sound honest. I don't feel like anything is being fancied up, but I also don't feel like I'm getting the detail necessary for analytical or critical listening. If it fits your use case and this sounds like what you want, it could be a good headphone. I think that the build will last a pretty long time. And once again, if you're a professional, 560S. I think that's going to be it. A couple interesting things. I have a review coming on the AirPods Max because those are kind of wacky. Apple releasing a near $600 headphone with a lot of hi-fi marketing in it, so that review's on the way. I'm going to do a video talking about this M1, and right there we have the Unique Melody Mesh, which is a crazy IEM that a lot of people have been telling me is amazing. And in some ways it actually is. But I'm going to set this down. I think that's going to wrap up this video. Guys, if you like this video, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can at forum.hifiguides.com. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until next one, guys. Peace.